Hi, everyone. I'm Ashley McManus, Director of Global Marketing at Affectiva. Welcome to Affectiva Asks, a human-centric AI podcast where each episode we will interview a thought leader doing cutting-edge work in the AI space. A little bit about us. Affectiva is the pioneer of emotion AI, software that can detect nuanced human emotions, complex cognitive states, behaviors, activities, and interactions. And Affectiva is applying this technology to optimize brand content and media spend by measuring consumer emotional responses to videos, ads, and TV shows unobtrusively and at scale. Advertising has the ability to influence consumer behavior and can be instrumental in creating and reinforcing positive or negative stereotypes. The advertising industry plays an important role in leading change, and you don't have to be an activist brand to start positively representing people in ads. It's relevant for all brands. Today's episode features our CMO Gabi Zijderveld, Graham Page, Affectiva's Global Managing Director of Media Analytics, talking with Vera Sidlova, Global Brand Manager of Creative at Kantar, about some of the latest evidence about the power of inclusivity in advertising and how to get it right. Let's listen in on the conversation to learn more.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this live stream. Thanks for joining us. My name is Gabi Zijderveld. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Affectiva. Since many of you are probably seeing us on LinkedIn, you probably know a bit about us, but just for a quick recap, Affectiva is the pioneer in emotion AI. We started this new field of emotion sensing artificial intelligence software. We've been in market with commercial products for over a decade, and especially we've been very active in the media analytics space, where large numbers of the world's biggest advertisers use our technology to understand how their target audiences are responding to their brand content, such as, for example, ads and video ads. And with the insight that we provide to them, it allows them to create much more relevant and much more targeted creatives. In the past few years, we've also expanded our technology to detect a lot more than just emotions. We can understand people's reactions to certain environments and certain contexts. We can understand people's activities, the objects they use. But more about that at another time. I'm super excited to have a little chat here, setting us up for a webinar we're doing next Thursday on the 27th with Vera Sidlova from Kantar and our very own Graham Page, who heads up our media analytics business unit. Vera, could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Vera Sidlova. I work at Kantar in the creative domain, and what we help do is help our clients develop great creative that will have a positive impact on their business. And we do this by helping them find the right human insights, then base their creative off of them, and ultimately develop something that's going to make an impact on the audience and really drive the messages that they want to deliver and leave impressions, lasting impressions on people. And I manage our creative solutions that help them do that.
Excellent. And yeah, we're super excited to work with you, Vera, and your team. Really interesting content, as we'll unpeel a little bit today. Graham, tell us a bit more about Affectiva's media analytics and also the work we're doing with Kantar and about yourself, of course.
Will do. Hi, everybody. I'm Graham Page. So as Gabi said, I run the media analytics division here at Affectiva. As Gabi alluded to, our technology is used by many of the world's largest advertisers, often through the partnerships that we have, including a lot of them through Kantar. And they use the tech to help optimize the content and the branded content that they put out into the marketplace. So we as I think many of you know, our core technology measures people's emotional and cognitive reactions based on their facial expressions. So as part of the research that Kantar do, we are integrated with some of the creative development tools that they have. So as people watch ads, for instance, as part of those research projects, we can record their faces and understand from their facial expressions, that kind of moment by moment response, which is obviously very powerful for many advertisers to help understand really if they're getting the response that they want. Did people engage with content, and did they respond in the way they wanted? So that's kind of the work that we do, and it's we've done 50,000, 55,000 I think ads now around the world. So lots of data to draw upon, and Kantar have a huge amount as well. So we've got some interesting stuff I think to say in the webinar next week.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. And when you think about the massive amount of data that we've accumulated over the years, right, and over 50,000 ads that's been tested, when you start digging into that, there really are some super interesting insights, and combined with the Kantar work and the Kantar research expertise, we get to some cool stuff. Now specifically on advertising, right? Advertising has had issues, let's face it. Lack of diversity, often a much too stereotypical portrayal of people, lack of diversity and inclusivity. It's an issue. And Kantar and Affectiva have done quite a bit of work on researching and analyzing what progressive portrayal in advertising really is, what it looks like, and the impact it has. We continue in our work together to uncover really interesting findings. And in prep for this, I've been privileged to see a little bit of that, and it is actually quite cool. But there's quite a bit of incoming interest in this as well, right? The brands are really looking to make change and are coming to Kantar and Affectiva for insights. So Vera, tell us a bit more about that and what you're seeing going on right now.
So obviously the topic is not new. A lot of our clients have been grappling with this for a while, but I get questions about how to get it right or how to progress with it further about once a week. So it's obviously a topic that's of a lot of interest to a lot of brands that are trying to figure out how to do it right. If they're speaking to the right people, if they've got the right people on board to create that kind of work, and are asking us a lot of questions about how that all fits together and ultimately what the consumer viewpoint is on certain things coming from them. And that's, I think, where we now come in. It's coming up with new insights. It's less about, should I do this or not, but the how. Like, how do I do this right? How do I do it in a way that's authentic to who I am as a brand and to the people I want to speak to? So it's really taking it to that next level and understanding in more depth how you take care of that in your communications and how you really address those issues. And if you've done stereotyping in the past, how do you course correct? How do you authentically admit that you've done some wrong? And we'll be talking about all those things in the webinar as well.
Yeah, such interesting questions. And Graham, please chime in.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's interesting, as you say, we've I guess talked about this topic in the past, but what, as Vera was saying, it's now becoming, thankfully, it's becoming an issue that the industry is really engaging with, and and there's definitely, I think, a bit of a change in the amount of inclusivity and diversity that we see in the industry. But it does mean that some brands are struggling with it, and as they kind of grapple with the issues, you see some good cases, you see some bad cases. So what we've seen certainly over the last couple of years is a much wider set of cases that we can draw upon. There's a lot more that we can learn about what works and what doesn't work as brands seek to become more inclusive. So I think we've got some, a far wider set of cases to talk about, a far wider set of implications, and we've begun to really see what does work. And so we felt it was worth sharing that information and doing something again that updates some of the things we've seen before.
Excellent. That's great. So tell us a bit more. What's the basis of the work that's been done here? Like, what are you drawing on? How do you derive and get to these insights?
Vera, so we're drawing on a number of sources here. One of them is our link database, where we store the results of all the ads we test. And Kantar to date has tested over 200,000 ads. So that's a really large database to just understand creative effectiveness on. But for the past couple of years, we've been also tracking how those ads do on diversity, both in terms of who's in them, who's represented in the ads, but also how those people, whether those ads are perceived as stereotypical or progressive by the viewers. So we've got a really good eye on who's in the ads. How often do we actually represent certain groups? But then how does that translate into how people see the ads? And ultimately, does that translate into the ads being better performing ads for the brand? Does it actually have any business impact? So that's going to be one of the sources that we're going to look at. Another one is our Creative Effectiveness Awards winners. So Kantar awards the most creative and effective ads, and this year's as well as last year's actually have some fantastic cases of inclusion done right. So we're going to really look at those and how they did it and what led them to success. And we are obviously going to draw on our client experience here because we've helped a lot of clients on their journey to doing this right. So we're going to use those experiences, and they've been guiding us in how we've approached the content for the webinar. So that's part of what we're doing. But Graham, would you like to add what else we've done to make sure that we're presenting those deeper insights and adding more nuance to the conversation?
Yeah, happy to. So again, like Kantar, obviously we have a lot of data in common. Obviously, our technology is used in many of the ads that Vera was talking about. But so we do have that database of, in our case, 50,000 ads to draw upon to look at, whether things like, are ads that are more inclusive and feature more diverse casting, are they better or worse, and what makes them better or worse than average. So we've got a lot of that kind of data to draw upon. There'll be case studies and lots of them. We'll talk about that more in a second, I'm sure. But also between us, Affectiva and Kantar have done some specific testing in the build-up to this webinar to really look at some specific ads that I think take different approaches to inclusion. And so we'll be able to share some of the results of those and really kind of dive deeper on individual ads to say, okay, look how this works or look how this doesn't work. So hopefully lots to say.
Oh, excellent. And I certainly look forward to the deep dive next week. As a matter of fact, we're doing that on Thursday, May 27th. We're doing 2 sessions of a webinar, and shortly the team here will also share the URL so everyone can register for that. But please give us a sneak peek. What will you talk about? What are some of your findings, maybe even if you can give us a little insight there?
Yeah, so we're going to take a little bit of a trip down memory lane and look at what advertising used to do in the past and whether that's changed in terms of inclusion and diversity. So how has the industry evolved? Are we showing people are we showing different people? Are we showing them in new ways? Has that progressed in any way? So that's going to be a little bit of what we're going to talk about. Another question is going to be if actually progressive portrayals are good for business. So what do we see are the differences between ads that are seen as unstereotyping by people versus those that maybe rely on those old tropes in portrayal. And we're going to dedicate a large portion of the webinar to going in depth on some of the cases that Graham just mentioned. So how does it make people feel when we put these stories out there? What's the response? What are the different ways of getting it right? Is there only one way? Are there multiple? What are they? What if if you're an activist brand that has committed resources to this, what are some of the paths for you? And what if you're not? What do you do if you maybe aren't a brand that has had a voice on that in the past? What are some ways for you to be inclusive, and how do you get there? So that's in short kind of what we're going to cover, but really delving deep into what works and why.
Yeah, and I think actually, what's struck us, I think, as we've written the content is just deep diving on some of the ads, showing the ads. You'll see a lot of actual content shown in the webinar. Really kind of makes it come to life, and really kind of makes you realise what is a good way of doing this, and what works less well. So yeah, there'll be plenty of ads shown and deep dives into those ads to help really illustrate the findings and the points that we're making.
Excellent. Fantastic. Now, of course, we're not going to preempt this whole webinar here and share everything, but are there maybe a few snippets that you can share? And also in this research, was there anything that came out that might actually surprise people? Tell us a bit more, please.
So I think maybe I'll start with the surprising thing, but maybe something that we sometimes hear is a worry, will I alienate people if I go the IND route? And obviously, I won't reveal the whole thing, but I would just say that there is less worry for clients than they're currently feeling on that front. And often that hate online is quite loud, but in reality, when you actually speak to an audience as broad as your consumers, you might be surprised by just how small the number of people who actually actively voice this hate towards an ad would be. So that's something that I think was quite surprising. I mean, we often worry about a certain part of the audience being really negative and maybe outwardly not progressive towards an ad, and maybe that backfiring for a brand. But we've found in our research that isn't maybe as big of a concern as many brands are feeling, especially if they're about to choose whether to go on that journey or not. Another thing I would say with that is that while things are getting better, especially with many of the global players in advertising, the work is not done. And when we were doing the research for this, I was actually surprised by a number of ads from, as old as 2020 that were deeply stereotypical from brands that were relatively established in their respective markets. So while there are a lot of brands doing the work, really thinking about how to get it right, we don't always get it right. So let's think about why that is and how we can make that better. And some of those were surprises that you wouldn't, or that I didn't certainly expect to see.
Really interesting.
I think from our perspective, some of the things that were I think maybe surprising is actually how people respond in that kind of intuitive and emotional way to some of these ads. I think again there may be a bit of a sense that some people might give a politically correct answer on some of the surveys that they take about these ads, and actually so people might say, yeah, no, this is great, and if they're presented with a very inclusive ad. But actually might not really react like that. I think, again, we won't preempt too much, but I think there's some very interesting data that comes out of just watching people's faces while they watch these ads, and how actually I think on a very emotional and kind of system one level, actually a lot of these ads are very powerful. But we'll get into a lot more of that on the day. But I also think there's the other piece that I think stands out to me is just how I guess kind of how diverse the canvas is, or how wide the canvas is for brands to actually paint upon, in this space. I think, there is this narrow sense of a lot of these ads have to be quite campaigning and purpose-led. I think, there's some interesting stuff in here about how actually there is a much wider lens that can be taken with this area. So yeah, we'll get into a lot of that.
Excellent. And we'll do that, of course, also showing many examples, right, of ads that are really doing this right, or maybe some areas where improvements can be made. So really look forward to that. Before we wrap up, since we're doing this live stream here and it's streaming to LinkedIn, we do get some questions. And we actually got an interesting question from Tom Gards that I know we've done some work on. And I also know that could probably fill a whole webinar in itself at some point in time. But I did want to acknowledge this question, right? It's an interesting one in how inclusion and diversity in advertising could maybe be used to encourage people to actually get vaccinated or follow World Health Organization COVID guidelines, or in general, right? Encourage people to take better care of themselves and reduce the need for healthcare. Very interesting question. Maybe a few quick thoughts from the both of you on that one?
Well, maybe as a way to zooming out a little bit first, it's to think about if there are people that maybe are have less access to vaccines, or understanding actually where those people are coming at first, where are they coming from on guidelines or vaccination attitude, whatever it may be. So really having an insight of who those people are, what they do, what they feel. Then I think once you have that footing, you can craft successful communication. I don't think it's just about, a tick box exercise. Do I have all these people in the ads? It's more about really understanding how are all these people feeling towards what I'm going to talk about, and do I have the right messages, and am I voicing them with the right tone, and I'm actually addressing their concerns. If the concern is vaccine safety, then is do I have the right people talking about that in the comms? If the concern is accessibility or difficulty of registration, then again, am I addressing that with the right people in the advertising? So I think it's definitely something that people need to think about, but it goes much further, like really understanding who the people are, what their barriers and motivations are, and then making sure that you craft communications that really connect with that need, and with that very, I think, often very human worry, is the vaccine safe, and do I have all the information that I feel I need to do it? And it's similar for COVID guidelines. So I think there's definitely room to do that better. We do actually touch upon it a little bit in the webinar, again without spoiling, but I do think what we cover will apply to public health communications just as well.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That's great. Graham, please.
Yeah, I think the only build I'd have on that is I think, clearly in when it comes to things like vaccines and so on, I think inclusivity is obviously important. But I think even more important is what Vera said, which is understanding the barriers, because actually I think a really well-crafted narrative that features somebody that isn't necessarily from your background or your cultural heritage, but which still speaks to that issue very powerfully and your concerns very powerfully, can still be really powerful. So I do think diversity is important, but it's not the only answer to that question, I think.
Yeah, no, that's really, really great observations, great advice. We are going to talk a lot more about this topic of diversity and inclusion in advertising on Thursday. The webinar will take place on Thursday the 27th. We're running 2 sessions. One is at 9 a.m. British time, and then there's going to be another session at 5 p.m. British time, which would then be noon US East Coast time. So something there for everyone. Please join us. But for now, Vera and Graham, thank you so much for coming on, giving us a bit of a teaser of what's yet to come. And I, for one, am super excited to see the webinar. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This conversation teased up such an important topic, and we've got some great examples and learnings to share in our upcoming webinar this Thursday, May 27th, where experts from Kantar and Affectiva will explore how inclusion and diversity in advertising has evolved and the impact positive representation can have. If you can't make it, which you should because you can ask questions of this group, sign up anyway or download the recording later on either the Kantar or Affectiva events pages. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe to Affectiva's Human-Centric AI podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts for new episodes. We are also on social media, so please reach out to us on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram at Affectiva to share any feedback you have on the show and weigh in on the discussion using hashtag AffectivaAsks. Don't forget to rate us and comment with your feedback to help make the podcast more discoverable for others. Until next time, thanks for listening.